Welcome to today's Connects workshops. The actual topic is going to be the lean startup. It's an approach that we use here at Carnegie Mellon to get companies started, and it's built in throughout our experiential learning curriculum, like here at the Connects workshop series, but it's also built into the classes that we give for credit. So you'll be hearing a lot about this as you go through your time here at CMU. So I'm going to give you an introduction to Agile and Lean startups. Even before there was a Steve Blank, I worked with Innovation Works, which is the local Pennsylvania seed fund. And we put together a program called the Agile Innovation System. It was part of the I-6 challenge under Obama's first administration. It was, how do we bring innovation back and improve the economy? Obama had campaigned on that all net new jobs were started by startups and small businesses. So big companies, they may be hiring, Google may be hiring, Facebook may be hiring, but guess what? One of their counterparts is fired, right? So all the net new jobs come from the space that you all are in. So we're going to talk about that. Then I'm going to show you a video from the guy who coined the term lean startup. And so hopefully there. Now, I get this a lot of times. Oh, by the way, if we had more time, I would also show you one of the cool startups in Pittsburgh called 4Moms, how they actually validated their products. At 4Moms applies robotics and low-cost electronics to baby gear. I happen to be on the board of that company. It's a really cool company. But one of the things that we hear a lot is, well, this is only for Web 2.0, crap, right? That's the only place you can apply lean startups or agile, and nothing could be further from the truth, right? I'm not going to go into it today, but there's a lot you can read out there on the web about how you could apply lean startup concepts to semiconductor development, which is a long process, but the concepts are still applicable. And we've seen it with a ton of our companies. This is Henry Thorne on the right, is a two-time CMU grad, technical co-founder of 4Moms. And he used lean startup concepts to build 4Moms into a $100 million revenue business right now. This is Hannah Alexander and oh God, why am I forgetting Matt's last name? Matt Stanton. They created a company that put a piezoelectric sensor in the heel of your shoe. Every time you walked, it created kinetic energy, which was turned in and stored as electric energy in a battery, right? Cool company, entrepreneur, invention of the year award. Hannah was entrepreneur of the year here at Carnegie Mellon as well. They use lean startups. And even non-tech businesses. This is our newest full-time faculty member in the entrepreneurship group here at Carnegie Mellon, Meredith Grelly. She created a company called Wiggle Whiskey, which is an amazing experience-based company. It's funny how you have good experiences while you're drinking whiskey, but she's really, really good at it. And she weaves the whole story around how the whiskey rebellion was started here in Western Pennsylvania by a guy named Weigel. But of course, as Ginzers, we, Pittsburghese everything, so it's Wiggle Whiskey. And the very first, contrary to popular opinion, Donald Trump did not start the executive orders, right? The very first executive order ever was by George Washington to rise up a militia to march on Pittsburgh to put down the whiskey rebellion. And the story goes from there. So really, really cool. So with that background, I'm going to get started, but I'm a goofy guy, as my team will tell you. And so I always like to start with a riddle. Okay. The current world record for solving this riddle is 7 seconds. So you all have a chance at the world record here. Okay. Just getting in. So here we're going to go with the riddle. Okay. I'm going to start the basketball count. Old fart, old car, old glory, 2 seconds. Any guesses? What are those old things under? Nobody watches CBS this morning with their son's best television show ever. I'm just saying. They did a great piece on Billy Porter, CMU alum, Pittsburgh native this weekend. No one gets this? Come on. Old things under what? Okay, now take that basis and solve this riddle.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Woo!
There's a new sun.
There is. He got it. Unfortunately, he didn't get the record. He's like in next to last place. I'm just kidding, right? I'm just kidding. No, there's nothing new under the sun, right? The lean startup, agile development, all of these things are not new. We just applied new labels to them and we applied them in new situations, right? So I want to just sort of show you how this gets back to first principles, right? Fundamentals. So the latest version of this started with this term. You ready? Kaizen. Kaizen. Who knows what Kaizen means? Volunteers. Yes.
Good mentor.
Dude, it's a trick question. Just read. Just read. No, you were getting it. Go ahead, read it.
Yeah, it's like a process of continuous improvement
Yes.
and refinement so that you're reaching the optimum outcome every time.
Yeah, exactly. I pick on people in the audience. I don't mean anything bad by it, so don't take it bad. And if you do, you can come up and punch me in the face afterwards. So it's rapid, continuous, incremental improvement. All right. Who knows where and when Kaizen got started? Who invented Kaizen?
Toyota.
Oh, Mike. Hey, Mike. I can't hear him. What do you say?
I was saying Toyota.
Toyota.
Toyota production system. No.
Wrong answer. Good attempt. Wrong answer. Now I discouraged everybody, didn't I? I'm so sorry. Okay. So I won't embarrass anybody else. Mike, you were really close. Okay, buddy? You were really close. After World War II, the United States had dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Horrible thing. There's debates on whether there would have been more bloodshed if that hadn't happened. It happened. But what it did is it presented an opportunity for the first time in history to rebuild an industrial company from the ground up, from zero. Because remember, Tokyo had been firebombed to the ground too, right? So it wasn't like it was just Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan had a problem. And in Europe, which had the war had ended there 6 months or so previously, they implemented something that was called the Marshall Plan. Do you remember that? You've probably heard about it in history. Well, a similar plan was enacted in Japan to start from the ground up. And it turns out that Kaizen was developed by a famous American, who we'll get to in a second, as a video to help train people who were rebuilding the Japanese manufacturing capability. And the film was Improvement in 4 Steps, or translated into Japanese, and my accent will be terrible, Kaizen Onyo Yondankai, right? And so Kaizen is improvement, right? Kaizen is improvement. And so we've added to it, it's rapid, continuous, incremental improvement. And does anybody know who created this video? The quality award that's given worldwide today is named after this gentleman. Edwards Deming, down at the bottom. You ever hear the Deming Award? People are Six Sigma, you're applying for ISO 9000. His name is put up there. That's where it came from, okay? So its first successful commercial implementation. Michael, your chance to get a right answer now. TPS, Michael. Oh, he's mad at me. He left. The Toyota production system was the first real scale level implementation of Kaizen and Agile. And so we started to use the term Agile, right? Because instead of having long production lines where things had to go, we started to have work cells where things could be moved around and be a lot more agile. And Agile manufacturing became real things in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was all the rage. If you remember business re-engineering, it was all around this idea of being agile and re-engineering processes to be agile. And it even started to make its way into the software world in the 1990s. And in fact, the momentum became so strong that they actually wrote a thing called the Agile Manifesto for software. And it was written by a guy named, two guys, Sutherland and Schwaber. And for anybody who is familiar with Scrum, anybody who use Scrum, hear of Scrum, Ken Schwaber is the author of Scrum. He is the guy that created that particular process with Sutherland. So it was interesting because if you really want something to put you to sleep at night, go read the Software Agile Manifesto. It's really freaking boring. But I tried to pull out the points that are more important here that we use today in the software world and other places, is that individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools. So Manish, I just introduced him to a bunch of law firms and a bunch of people that are working with legal documents. He's going to go do this thing called customer discovery, because we need to talk to the individuals and we need to understand the problems from their point of view, right? We value working software over comprehensive documentation, right? It's the prototypes, the alphas, and the other names that we have for that, getting them into people's hands early and often so that we can see what works and what doesn't work, because nothing works right the first time, right? It's customer collaboration over contract negotiation, right? Let's not try to foresee everything that's coming up and write it down in a contract. Let's keep a conversation going, right? That's the whole idea of the daily scrum, right? Every day we're getting together, we're checking in. What did we do yesterday? What do we do today? What blockages do we have? What needs to be removed, right? It's about that constant interaction. And then it's about responding to change before we go off the cliff, right? So that's what's important here. And I like to, put it into different terms. And so, will the dogs eat the dog food, right? So Manish is getting out, he's talking to customers, he's going to find out what would they use or what wouldn't they use and why. Focusing on the problem first, not the solution, the problem. And once we understand that problem, we'll do better, which leads us to the question, why do most startups fail? By the way, the numbers are striking. Who can give me an estimate of how, the percentage of startups that fail? 50? 80? Good guess. Way higher.
97.
You said someone say 97? 95? Right in the middle of those two is kind of where the current estimate is, right? And it's even worse than that, because that's of all startups. Like, we're going to count Manish's company as a startup right now. He hasn't written a lick of code yet, but he could fail in the idea phase, right? So here's the one that kills me. This is closer to your number, is the National Venture Capital Association did a study 4 or 5 years ago now that said that 70% of all companies that raise Series C and Series A, right? Now, that means you're down the path. You have some good evidence that what you're doing might work. 70% of those fail to return capital, which is financial failure, right? So if the numbers are so bad, why do you want to do this? Are you freaking crazy? Don't tell your parents that you're here today at the Connects workshop. They'll throw you out of the inheritance. No, we do it because this is our opportunity to dent the universe, to make a change. And if you follow these concepts that we're talking about today, your probability of success goes dramatically up, right? So we're here to help you sort of avoid the early failure. And it's by focusing on the customer, not your solution. So the answer is, why do most startups fail? Because they don't talk to customers early and often enough. Yes, question.
Maybe they also assume the customers are dogs and they're making dog food for the dogs, not really thinking of them as humans.
Well, so there's a couple of notions that are out there. It's like customers don't know what they need, right? They're just going along and they're not, they know they have the problem, but they don't think about what the solution is. And that's true. So what we talk about in terms of problem identification in this phase is that, first of all, this pain that they're feeling from this problem has to be so searing enough that they're willing to pay you now to help solve it. All right. And then the second part of it is market sizing. There has to be enough of those customers for it to be worth your while, your time to go after that opportunity. Because if it's a tiny market, you are not going to be able to attract the resources or the people in general. Maybe you will be, but in general, you will not be able to attract the resources and people to go after that problem efficiently. And any problem that's worth solving, customers are trying to find a way to solve it today. They may be paying an outside consulting, soul-sucking contractor to help them, and their interests are not aligned. They may be daisy chaining together solutions to help solve it, but that doesn't work in the long haul, right? So it is an opportunity for you to help the world in a very, very real way. So in this world of Agile and Lean, we came up with a new term to talk about this rapid, incremental, continuous solution that we're going to put in front of our customers once we validated the problem and validated there's enough of them. And do you know what that is? The MVP. Anybody know what MVP stands for?
Minimum viable product.
No, come on. It's MVP is the most valuable player. They own that. You just can't come in and steal their brand. It will always be the most valuable player. So at Carnegie Mellon, to get around this little problem, we've come up with our own name. This was coined by Sean Ammirati, who's a venture capitalist. Oh, country bike guy. Did you have fun?
I did.
Just did a cross-country bike tour. And he was 300 pounds before. Look at him now. No, Sean Ammirati came up with a new term, and we call it the minimally awesome product, right? And it's the same concept, but he tells a story about working with some entrepreneurs in Portugal who had just gotten married, two guys, and they had gone through the whole sort of wedding process and said, oh, we can do this online. We can do this on the internet. And they built an MVP, and it looked horrible. So no woman actually used it, right? So the point is that if you're going to build something, even though it's minimally functional, it's got to be attractive, and it's got to get to the point of solving that problem right away. Okay. Minimal what? I like that. MLV. I like it a lot. Very cool. Go to the trademark office really quickly, because I might beat you to it. I'm teasing you. But the idea is that, look, you just can't put crap out there. It has to be somewhat attractive, somewhat usable, right? Or people won't use it. And you might be on the right track to solve the problem with the underlying technology, but people won't go with you, okay? So this has brought us to this new evolution. And as Steve Blank in the NSFI Corps and Eric Rees talk about, customer development is as important as product development. That's what the minimal viable product came from. Steve Blank, multiple time entrepreneur. Eric Rees, who wrote the book, The Lean Startup, and Tom Eisenman, a professor at Harvard, are generally considered to be the people that have used this new terminology, right? And I like it because it really talks about this situation where we have an unknown problem to start. We have a hypothesis as to what that problem is, and we're going to go out and talk to customers to validate that hypothesis, and we have an unknown solution. And Eric Rees will talk about it a little bit later, because in a lot of times we have a known problem and a known solution that we can recreate. And you can use other types of development processes when those two conditions are true. But we're in the condition where it's an unknown problem and an unknown solution. Although you as the entrepreneur do have hypotheses as to what the problem and the solution are. That's okay. You can have them, but you have to treat them as hypotheses and not facts. So it's customer development meets product development, and that is what the Lean Startup is. That's where it comes from. Now, that riddle back at the beginning had a purpose, right? And that was, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Because everything I just told you didn't start at the end of World War II. And You learned about this under another name when you were in middle school. Hundreds of years old, you learned about it in middle school. Does anybody have a guess as to what this really is?
Scientific method.
It is the scientific method applied to business, right? In the scientific method, we have a hypothesis of the experiment that we're going to run and what the results are going to be. That's my problem. The experiment is the MAP. It's the potential solution. It's a result that we look at, we analyze, and we refine. Either we validated our hypothesis or we start over again and we pivot. Okay? First, principles, fundamentals. You've used this in your whole life. When I was a student here at Carnegie Mellon 8 years ago, about 38 years, a long time ago, this is what I learned. Under a different set of names and a different set of actions, but it was the same thing. And it was taught by that old fart, Frank Demler, that I put up at the end of the sun. If any of you have, Frank is still on the faculty here. He's 97 years old, and no, he's in his 70s. Great guy. He teaches our funding early stage ventures class at the graduate level, undergraduate level. He pitches into our intro to entrepreneurship class. If you haven't met him, got to meet him. He's got a rough surface but a really kind heart, and he knows more about entrepreneurship, and he's forgot more about entrepreneurship than I'll ever know. So really great guy. But he taught this to me, and that's important. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show Eric Ries's talk. It's about 10 minutes or so, going over these concepts with a little bit of a different take, just so you can hear it from some other voice. And then we'll come back and talk about some of the next steps that you guys can take. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more as we get close, and we'll have some time for questions about what to look for throughout this process, right? So most of the failure happens in 0 to 1, right? 0 being the idea, 1 being product market fit. And there are lots of failure modes, but the 3 most prevalent failure modes are avoidable. And the first one of them is false positives. And that's, I've talked to my brother and my sister, and my mother and my aunt, and they all love the idea. We're not wasting people's time. Let's go forward, right? Well, that's probably going to put you in the false positive territory. First of all, don't talk to people you know, because they're going to look you in the eye and say, that is great, while they're thinking that sucks, right? Because they want you to be successful and they don't want to bring you down, right? So get out. You got to talk to a large number of people that are a statistically valid set or close to it. And it should be people that you do not know that are going to tell you the truth, okay? The second is signal to noise problem. You get out, you talk to lots and lots of different people, but you're getting different answers. And typically that's because you put some bias of some sort into the inquiry. That's why we say use design thinking techniques. Design thinking has been developed over a long period of time to avoid the bias that can be brought in by an interviewer or an observer of sorts, okay? So that's the second problem. The third one, this gets back to the MVP versus MAP versus MLV, MLP. And that is, your problem is your product's not good enough, right? It's not really solving the problem, okay? This is where the 3 most prevalent failure modes are. And so another thing that we try to look for to solve this last problem is a term called the goodness factor, and it was published here at Carnegie Mellon by my mentor, the guy right back there says the Don Jones Center for Entrepreneurship. I was a student here. He gave $1 million to start the Don Jones Center, and I talked him into starting a company with me. Amazing guy. He's like the second father, smartest guy I've ever met. He coined this term, and the goodness factor is if you enter a market where there is an existing solution at the same price that you're going to, that means you have to be 3 times better, or 3 times cheaper if you have the same benefit, okay? So why is that? Why does it have to be 3 times better at the same price or 3 times cheaper at the same benefit? Because people are fundamentally lazy. They don't want to change, right? And you have to give them a compelling reason to change. And if you don't, they won't. I always use the example of Bing versus Google. Did you know that Bing was provably better than Google on many dimensions? Not all, but many dimensions. Bing, there's been research papers written about it. Raise your hands. How many people use Bing? I usually get one, and I know who the Microsoft employee is in the audience, right? But the funny thing is I get Microsoft employees in the audience and they say, I'm not using Bing, right? It's because Bing is only incrementally better than Google on the dimensions that it's better. It is not compellingly better or compellingly easier to use, right? So I went along in the first 25 years of my entrepreneurial journey thinking 3 times better, 3 times cheaper. That's pretty good. And then these 2 books were written about 5-7 years ago, one by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1, great book, by the way, you should read it. The other by Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz fame. He was the product manager for the Netscape browser. Mark Andreessen was the inventor of the Netscape browser. So he wrote a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And they came out and said, no, it's 10 times better or 10 times cheaper. And their reasoning is because of the information technology explosion and revolution, there are just more solutions that are available to people. So you can't be just 3 times better and stand out in the crowd. You have to be 10 times better. Right now, all these numbers are relative. So don't don't worry about 3 or 10. It's compellingly better or compellingly cheaper that you should focus on. Okay. So it's very, very important. And then this is where I get a little controversial, but I've got 35 plus years of experience. Is there are only 3 quantitative, we're talking about goodness factor, quantitative benefits that exist in this world. There are only 3, and I'll take arguments after I present the 3. Okay. The first is saves me time. Time is quantifiable. It's equal amongst all of us. The second is it saves me money or makes me money, right? Money is, again, the same to all of us. Yes, there are exchange rates between different currencies, although Bitcoin's kind of thrown that out of the water, but at different times. It's important, all right? And the third one, I call it the Zuckerberg benefit, right? Everybody watch the movie Social Network, right? Why does Facebook exist? No, not because he stole it from the Bitcoin kings Winklevi, right? It's because he couldn't get a date. And he wrote Facebook to get himself dates, right? Now, come on, get your minds out of the gutter. That's not the only kind of connection. Yeah, that's why Tinder and Grindr and whoever else is successful out there, right? But relationships matter. A customer is a new relationship. A supplier is a new relationship. An employee is a new relationship, right? An investor is a new relationship. It's those connections that matter, and they're quantifiable, right? So that's my argument. These are the only 3 benefits that exist in the world. Does anybody disagree? No one's going to raise their hand because they know that.
Exactly, that makes life easier.
Oh.
Like how
How do we measure easy? It takes less time. I get more money for my effort, right? You can break it down into time and money. I'm not saying that those are not benefits. They're real benefits, but let me get to the chase here because we're almost out of time. Those are complex benefits, and easy means different things to everybody in this room. Your definition of easy is different than my definition of easy. My definition of pleasure is different than everybody else's definition of pleasure. It's only these 3. When we are talking to investors or customers or employees for the first time, we have to put it in terms that they understand, right? Once you have a relationship with somebody, you can get into more complex benefits. But to capture people's attention, it has to be quick and to the point and something that we have common understanding on, which is time, money, and connections. So that, easy is important. And if you can define easier, once you have someone's attention and their trust, go for it. But you don't have people's attention and trust in that first meeting. So you've got to bring it down to these, again, first principles, fundamentals. Okay. And then, we use tools like the business model canvas. I think we're out of sequence this year. Usually I go first and then the business model canvas goes afterwards. But this is a really good tool. I call this the internal business plan. The business plan is dead. Long live business planning. So this is the tool that helps keep everybody on the same page inside the company. Your pitch deck, right? Your pitch deck is your external business plan. That's what you share with investors. That's what you share with customers, right? You're telling them who you are and what your plan is. Not on here is, and it's a really important part of it, is the financial model, right? It's the quantification of what's on my business model canvas. And the punchline for me is, for those of you that are in MBA program and are spending $200,000, I could have saved you that $200,000 by this fundamental truth. The right side is about the customer and the product and the value. The left side is about the cost and how we get things done. So there's a cost structure on the left side, the revenues on the right side. All you need to know in business is the right side is greater than the left side. It's called profit. End of story. Now, there's a lot of nuance behind that, but guess what business school doesn't teach? What I just said. They try to make it more complex, and you have to figure that piece out on your own. But it's important. The financial model is just the quantification of your business model canvas. A lot of nuance there, a lot of details about what the business model canvas is and isn't, but it is a great tool. And so just to finish things off here, this was a picture taken at Jim Swartz' office at Agile Partners. This is all named after Jim. He gave us $30 million. He founded Agile Partners. If you don't know Agile Partners, you know the companies that they invested in. First institutional investor in Facebook, first institutional investor in Slack, and I could go on and on. This was from 2017, and just in this room, a bunch of graduates and undergraduate students. The guy in the very back on the left side of the picture on the wall there, that's Austin Webb, who you met earlier in this. And in 5 years since he's left college here, he's raised $75 million. This has got him the rang right here on the far right. If you're a member of the CMU Tech and Entrepreneurship Alumni Group, he's speaking about the future of autonomous vehicles tonight at 8 o'clock. You should check it out. He has a company called Gatic, has raised over $100 million. It's automated driving for trucks. Big customers like Walmart. Now they're going to compete with the Auroras and the Locomations of the world, right? And just 4 people to the left, blue button-down shirt with black buttons there. That's Simon Kalush. He's revolutionizing e-commerce fulfillment through human-assisted robotic picking, and he's come up with a system that they're writing an actual academic paper on. That's they've got a new way of doing fulfillment, and they're going to create fulfillment as a service. A warehouse that's 5 to 6 times more efficient than Amazon's best warehouse. So there's really lots of opportunity for you all sitting here, because you're only 4 or 5 years different than them in your age and in your journey. So think big, have confidence, you can do it. Cool. Any questions?
I have some very specific ones for my company.
Sure.
So the reason why companies fail or startups fail is they don't talk to customers often, but for Bitcoin, there's no traditional customer, we're just essentially printing money.
Well, I mean, that's one point of view, but there's, let me start with 2 things. The very first step that I talk about in customer discovery is not talking to the ultimate customers. And there are ultimate customers, because for Bitcoin to be printing money, someone has to be printing it and someone has to be accepting it. So one of them is a customer, right? But that's a nuance. First thing to do, and I just told Manish this, go talk to thought leaders and subject matter experts first. I've kept you over 5 minutes. Please, please, please come to the Swartz Center, use these resources. We are, anybody who's Carnegie Mellon ever, you had a sister that came here for a seminar one day, you're a Carnegie Mellon person, right? We like to define it broadly, but literally alumni are welcome. We have programs that are targeted all the different folks, and hopefully we'll help you along your journey in some way. Thank you very much.